Okay.
Mayor, a Bronx question?
Wait. We'll get to you. Morgan, go ahead.
Okay.
Mayor, I believe you've pitched this idea before, but just wondering where you were at with this. I believe you said you spoke to the governor about potentially moving migrants upstate to shelters as well. Just wondering if that was still something on the table that you've been discussing.
Yeah, the federal government and the state must have a decompression strategy. Both the federal government and the state have a decompression strategy. This is a national problem. The country should be a part of this. And so we have several decompression strategies that we're going to put in place for the entire country. Mom used to say, in absence of a leader, be a leader. If I can't get my national government to do a decompression strategy, I need to figure out a decompression strategy. This must be a decompression strategy. It's unfair to El Paso, Houston, Chicago, Washington, Brownsville in Texas. This is unfair to all of our cities. No city should be carrying the burden of a national problem. And we're putting in place our decompression strategy.
So is that something you guys have movement on? Is that going to be something that happens in the near future?
We're putting it. I learned from El Paso. That trip was extremely informative to me. I spoke with the church, Sacred Heart, who was doing a decompression strategy in El Paso. We learned a lot. My team is now sitting down, putting together our version of that decompression strategy.
Afternoon, Mr.
How are you,
Mayor.
Melissa?
I'm good, thank you. How
Good.
are you?
Quite well.
So we are very well aware of the unprecedented strain that the migrant influx has placed on our city's shelter system. One recent example is that there used to be 2 intake centers for women becoming homeless in the city to go to, and now they have been consolidated into one because one of them was repurposed to take care of migrants. And we feel that it's having consequences from what we're seeing. We interviewed a woman last week who was leaving a domestic violence situation. She said when she got to that intake center, there's only one left now, it was crowded, the delays were so long, and the conditions seemed so uncomfortable and unsafe to her that she moved into a rental car. Coalition for the Homeless and the Legal Aid Society, we know they've been regular critics of your administration's efforts, but they've been flagging your team for a couple of weeks now, saying that the city is again newly violating the right to shelter of these women at that one remaining intake center. Some women not getting a bed for many hours or even a few days. So my question is 2 parts. What have you been told, if anything, about whether there are violations of the right to shelter? And even if you're not familiar with the situation, Mr. Mayor, do you feel that it's unacceptable for women to be facing delays in getting shelter, or is it somewhat justifiable in the context of the crisis that you just talked about?
We are complying with the right to shelters. If there are some specific cases that we did not comply, we're hoping that the advocates bring it to our attention. Because that is not our desire. That was a good catch. I wish the Giants had you the other day. If there are cases where there was non-compliance, we want to know about it because our goal is to comply. But I continue to say, unless you may know, I don't know. Did any of those advocates write to the federal government to get the funding that we need? Did any of them? So for us to talk about those who are doing right, I want to know all those who are critiquing my administration, show me the letter that you sent to the federal government saying this is wrong what you're doing to New Yorkers. We will have delays in communication. We should not have delays in those New Yorkers who are supposed to find beds with a certain period of time. That should not happen. That's the rule.
That it is not happening?
No, I have not been told that it has. I meet with my team every morning to deal with this crisis. I have not received that information.
We got to move on. Sorry.
Over the
Let me
weekend.
finish the question she
I was
asked.
just curious,
Yeah.
were you aware that there was a story about this Friday and Saturday, and that your team was?
And the team looked into it as soon as we heard it. The team looked into it. Now, are you going to find when you're dealing with 40,000 migrant asylum seekers? We need to really hear that number. Our shelter system and those who are in care the number reached over 70,000. Unprecedented, never before in the history of our county. If we go to 1, 2, 3 people out of those 70,000 that says, I had to wait a little longer, it was crowded, yes, it's going to be crowded. You're going to have to wait a little longer. We're going to ask everyone to be patient with us as we deal with a crisis. I need us to really put this in the same mindset we put COVID. We waited longer. We had to go to unprecedented circumstances. This is a crisis, and we are responding better than any other municipality.
Okay, Kyle, go ahead.
Hi, thank you.
Legal aid was warning that by waiving certain protections under the right to shelter law, you could potentially put children at risk of staying in congregate intake shelters, and there were some concerns about that. I wanted to get your take on putting children in congregate shelters and the concerns around that, and I know there's a larger crisis, so just want to speak, why that wouldn't be an issue.
And I respect the role that legal aid play. Matter of fact, Manny, why don't you join me up here? I respect the role that legal aid plays. They have a role. We don't always agree, and I think we should do it without being disagreeable. Just raise their issues, we're going to raise our issues. And the part of the law that states every family must have a kitchen and a bathroom. When my son went to college in a dorm, he didn't have his own kitchen and bathroom. And he still did a great job, so that's just not realistic when you're getting 4,200 people in your city that you're going to find a place with kitchen and a bathroom. Our desire is not to put children and families in dormitory settings. Our desire is to manage a humanitarian crisis. And when you look at the law, what it was designed to do during that time had nothing to do with getting 4,200 people in a week. We have an 83% increase in our shelter system in a year. 83%. And so we need to all come to the table and say, let's re-examine the laws to see how do we adjust to this issue. And so we want to make sure people are safe. Unlike El Paso, our children and families are not sleeping on the streets. We are feeding thousands of people, over 60,000 that came through our system, laundry service, the children are being educated, medical service, mental health support, legal advice. What we're doing is unprecedented to any other municipality. When we spoke to our mayors from the other cities, some of them say, we're no longer giving beds. We're just going to give a chair. We're leading the way. And so if we have to re-examine the law to make it adjust to the real life humanitarian crisis we have, then we have to do that. Joe. I would have called you, but he called Joe.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
How are you? Those are some cool shoes, man.
I wanted to ask you about some of your efforts to your sort of local decompression strategy. You're trying to send some of the migrants who volunteer to locations in the Hudson Valley. You've gotten pushback, and in some cases, some restraining orders have been issued. I was wondering if you could address, what are your thoughts about some of the officials up there who have rejected your efforts, and can you give us any updates about talks with the governor, sort of who seems to be kind of playing a mediating role here, and some of the officials up there?
Yes. So we must be clear on what we're doing, because some people try to compare it to what Abbott did. We're paying for it. We're only taking volunteers. We are communicating with the officials up there on what we're doing. Now, some may not like it, but people can't say we're not communicating. Abbott did not pay. Abbott compelled people. And I remember reading a New York Post article of a 9/11 call that's saying that people were being held on buses. That's not what we're doing. And we are coordinating, explaining to our colleagues in the state that this is a statewide issue. It's not like New York just all of a sudden say, we're just going to send people and transport to some other municipalities. We're coordinating with others, and it took us over a year because we tried to hold on and do this the best we can on our own. And what we're sending is a quarter of 1% of what we have, a quarter of 1%. And so when you look at county exec day, I mean, this guy has a record of being anti-Semitic, his racist comments, his thoughts and how he responded to this. Really, it shows the lack of leadership. I thought he was the Texas governor, the way he acted. We're going to continue we're going to challenge the legal challenges, and we're going to continue to pursue. You can't use the courts to deny people to move around the state of New York.
Do you guys plan to appeal the restraining orders that have been placed? Can you appeal them? What are the next steps to the
Yeah, we're going to challenge all of the legal obstacles that are attempting to be placed in our way. We're going to challenge them because it would set a bad precedent. If someone is saying, in the state of New York that, you are not allowed to come here, that's just a bad precedent.
We could
Do you agree with the statement from Controller Brad Lander given at the budget hearing earlier this week that new revenues need to be raised to help pay for much of the city's expenses, including the rising cost of the migrants crisis?
New revenue, I assume he's saying raise taxes on New Yorkers who are already struggling, and that we are watching many businesses leave our city because of some of the high taxes. If that's what he's talking about, I would like to see the attention more from the comptroller on the federal government resolving this issue. And that includes Republicans in immigration reform, and that includes the White House and making sure this is properly funded. And so if we're going to say, let's just raise taxes on New Yorkers, if that's the answer to our problem, I just don't agree with that. And if that's his definition of new revenue, I just don't believe that's the correct manner. Listen, this problem is not sustainable. I don't know how I could say it any clearer. If we continue with what we're seeing, thousands of people a week, it's not sustainable. It's just opening new places, expanding throughout the state. This is not a sustainable problem, a sustainable method to address this problem. And so we just can't see if we're going to tax our way out of it by hitting New Yorkers with additional tax. We need to get the help from the national government, as I have been stating for some time now.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this month, the city stopped breaking down the number of migrants in the DHS shelter system and also in the emergency shelter sites. Now, as you know, there have been questions about the count that advocates are raising. Wouldn't it be better for the city to put all of this to rest by providing more data on the number of migrants at all the different shelter facilities, as opposed to pulling back and providing less data?
Well, no, listen, we want to be as transparent as possible. This is a moving target. And, I always hear people say the advocates, like, I don't know. The advocates that matter to me, they're the men and women of this city. Those are the people I hear from. And they clearly understand how this problem has been dropped in New York City's lap. Over 70,000 people, over 90,000 people currently in our care, 45,000 when we took office, 108% increase. So we are trying to be as transparent as possible as bus loads, planes come in, people are driving in. It is coming in so many different directions, and we try to give as much information as possible as we get it. It's a moving target that continues to grow. And I think that the entire apparatus, the entire team has been as transparent as possible. We want to continue to do so.
Hi, Mayor.
What's up, Emma?
So the commissioner said that this would clear up or free up much needed space in the shelter system. I'm wondering how many places in the shelter system, and are you hoping that that could be freed up for migrants? And also, you've been talking about cheaper options to house migrants. Of course, you've been contracting with hotels, other large-scale spaces. Would this be cheaper also for the city to have migrants going into the regular shelter system, and also how much cheaper?
Okay, I just want to do one correction, one error I made. I will move you out of that row, and Jeff Mays will take that seat. You know, he'll be part of that row.
That seems like a put us in the front.
No, I want you in the front. We have to find cheaper ways. Clearly, the numbers are not subsiding. You know, I don't think people realize we're still dealing with this issue. You know, Molly, that's been probably your biggest downside, is that you're managing the darn thing that people think is not still a crisis. We're still navigating upstate. The judge is still dealing with lawsuits up there. We're still trying to find partners. We're still trying to get the funding. And we have to find a cheaper way to do this, because it's just not sustainable. And we're looking at many ways of how we're going to deal with that influx of migrant and asylum seekers. Our goal is to get people into permanent housing. That's our goal. We can't accomplish that goal if the inventory is not there. The inventory comes with the extension of 421A, with lifting the FAR, with doing a hotel conversion, with building around transit hubs. People often look at the city and say build more without realizing the beginning process of building more starts upstate. You guys are astute enough you saw what happened upstate. No housing package came out of Albany. Everyone if you were to ask every elected official in Albany, what's the #1 crisis we're facing in the city? Probably the top 3, housing is going to be there. So how could we end a session not going with one of our top 3 issues? I just don't see how that could happen.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I wonder,
Yes.
there was a story in Politico today about migrants being sent to Florida, Texas, and China. I was wondering if there were any
A migrant doing?
migrants being sent from New York City to Florida, Texas, and China, and I'm wondering if there's any plans to expand or formalize this program, and if it saves money on balance to send migrants elsewhere than to house them here in New York City.
I'm not, you know about migrants. Well, listen, this is a national problem. Actually, it's an international problem. I'm meeting with my mayors from Belgium. My electeds from Belgium, from all over the globe. And this is a national problem that's hitting the globe, migrants shifting because of war-torn areas. I'm not aware of any going to China. I will reach out to the team and find out what the plan, but we have not made it a secret. We are interviewing people when they come, because many of them were forced to come to New York, and we're saying, where's the best place for you that you would like to go? If it's New York City, then we're going to accommodate to the best of our ability. If they say they want to go somewhere else, we're going to accommodate to the best of our ability. We're not doing like other administrations, putting people on bus rides, not giving them the food and the services, placing bans on them. We're not doing that. We're attempting to allow people to have the best start in this country or in another country if they want. I'm not aware of China. I would reach out and find out, and I'm sure the team will brief me on it. But whatever they're doing it to the best way of deal with a crisis that we're having, that New York City has been carrying on its own for the most part. And it's unfair to New Yorkers.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us here. So our question is, our community has experienced high drug use, homelessness, decline in school enrollment, financial stress on our families, and lack of enrichment programs and resources in schools that help and support their families. What are we doing for the future and the future of New York City, especially in light of the budget cuts?
You ran down a list of things, and each one of them have an appropriate answer. Number one, I would love for the chancellor to weigh in on what we're doing around things in the school. And you're right, we're dealing with real homeless issues. And we're going to hit a fiscal cliff next year when the federal money from the stimulus dollars are going to run out. What this administration did, and it's continuing to do, out of nowhere, this city was hit with over 70,000 migrants, asylum seekers. We received no help from the federal government like we should. It's going to cost us $4.3 billion. $4.3 billion. You don't see people sleeping on the streets like you see in El Paso when I went to Texas and other locations. This administration, through all of our agencies working as a team, we were able to bring people in and give them the accommodations. The federal government is saying to us, you have to pay for food, housing, cleaning clothing, educate children. We have to do all of this on taxpayers' dime. And I've asked the president, I've asked of the White House over and over again, this is unfair to New Yorkers. It's unfair to us. And that's going to come out of our coffers where we were doing extremely well. But while this is going on, we are still making sure that we put the resources inside our school in this budget, and you're going to see when we announce the final budget. Our goal is to try to keep our communities as harmless as possible, but the challenge we are facing on a federal level, and the congressman has been attempting to help us get the resources here. What they did with FEMA, they gave money to the bordering states, and they're using the money to bus the migrants and asylum seekers here to New York, instead of giving us the money so that we can provide the care and not take from everyday taxpayers in our city. So this is a challenge time. Some real economic challenges that we have to decide, but we have been managing the difficulties of the moment and investing in these entities and not attempting not to take away from them. We turned this city around in 20 months. And then what happened? Started with a madman down in Texas, decided he wanted to bus people up to New York City. 110,000 migrants. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry sheets, give them everything they need, health care. And this team here, we stated, let's do everything possible before we have to push it out into neighborhoods and communities. Month after month, I stood up and I said, this is going to come to a neighborhood near you. Well, we're here. We're here. We're getting no support on this national crisis, and we're receiving no support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month. One time we were just getting Venezuela. Now we're getting Ecuador. Now we're getting Russian-speaking coming through Mexico. Now we're getting Western Africa. Now we're getting people from all over the globe have made their minds up that they're going to come through the southern part of the border and come into New York City. And everyone is saying it's New York City's problem. Every community in this city is going to be impacted. We got a $12 billion deficit that we're going to have to cut. Every service in this city is going to be impacted. All of us. And so I say to you, as I turn it over to you, this is some of the most educated, some of the most knowledgeable, probably more of my commissioners and deputy commissioners and chiefs live in this community. So as you ask me a question about migrants, tell me what role you played. How many of you organized to stop what they're doing to us? How many of you were part of the movement to say, we're seeing what this mayor is trying to do, and they're destroying New York City? It's going to come to your neighborhoods. All of us are going to be impacted by this. I said it last year when we had 15,000, and I'm telling you now with 110,000. The city we knew we're about to lose. And we're all in this together, all of us. Staten Island is saying, send them out to Manhattan. Manhattan is saying, send them out to Queens. Queens is saying, send them out to Brooklyn. No, it's not the game we could play. Open the floor up. See you in a little bit.
I've got two questions for you. They're short, so, I think it's fine.
Good thing.
The first question is, do you regret tapping Eric Ulrich to be part of your administration? And the second question is, do you plan to meet with President Biden while he's in town for the UN General Assembly? And if not, why not? I know you've kind of been blowing up his spot a little lately. What's your plan with that?
You know what I want? I want a handheld mic so I can go to the reporters like Phil Donahue. I think that would just like add a little, I could walk around and, say, what do you think? Like scratch my head like Phil Donahue, So, think about it for a moment. You become knowledgeable about information of an individual, and then people say, do you regret doing A, B, or C? Like, you don't have that information in front of you. You make decisions based on what's in front of you. What was in front of me was a young city council, energetic, that worked hard. That was what's in front of me. That was what my decision was made of. And so those things that I'm not aware of those proper review groups would make the determination. That's not up to me to decide that. President Biden is coming to the city. I am hoping that he understands this beautiful city that's the economic engine of the entire country is being saddled with a $2 billion that we spent already, $5 billion we're going to spend in this fiscal crisis, $12 billion in the next two budgetary cycles. New York don't deserve this. The asylum seekers don't deserve this. And so while he's here, I think that they should really reflect on New York City has done its part. And once we know what I'm going to do, we release a public schedule. I'm very public. Everybody knows where I am. You guys know where I am all the time. We'll release if we're going to be with the president or not.
Mayor, have you spoken with the president about this issue? Have you invited him to tour a migrant shelter while he's here? And then a second question for you. There's a bipartisan group of lawmakers that are introducing a lawsuit to try to stop the Floyd Bennett bill from being used to house migrants. Just trying to get your reaction on that as well.
I spoke to the president earlier this year and shared our concerns. Both the governor was also communicated with him, and that was the last time we spoke with the president. I have communicated with the White House, staffers, to talk about the urgency of the moment. We need an emergency declaration. We need to be properly funded. We need a decompression strategy, not only in the city, but throughout the state. This is just wrong, what we're doing to New York City residents and what we're doing to the migrant asylum seekers. And so to those bipartisan lawmakers, look, I get it. Everyone is just frustrated. Everyone is really upset over this. Here we had a city that was coming back after the pandemic. All that we were doing, from public safety to investing in children and seniors, cleaning our streets. New York City, we went through enough during COVID. We were coming back. And so if lawmakers are upset, I got it. I got it. If residents are upset, I got it. If a migrant asylum seekers, I got it. I know they're upset. And, when people are upset, the first person they look for the mayor. Listen, that's the nature of the beast. So if they want to go to court and sue to stop us from doing the Floyd Bennett field, they have a right to do so. But if we're not putting it in Floyd Bennett field, we're going to put it somewhere. And so if they're saying don't put it in Floyd Bennett field, then I don't want to hear them later saying don't put it on my block. We have to put 116,000 people that are coming 10,000 a month. We have to put it somewhere. So if the lawmakers are going to say, Eric, we don't want it in our Floyd Bennett fields, which is away from homes, which is away from, communities, away from schools. If they don't want it there, then they can't get upset when it goes inside their neighborhood and block. We're trying to be as least intrusive as possible to everyday New Yorkers. At the same time, be as humane as possible, because we have to show that level of humanitarian aspect of this city.
Good morning. I didn't see you in person yesterday. I watched you. You were very emotional about the children involved with the fentanyl. Do you see a society where we are going to have to carry Narcan around? I mean, it's very upsetting.
That is a, you know, that is an indictment on us, man. That, you know, that those 4 babies, you know, going through that was, you know, some part of this job that just rips you apart. You know, this is not all cutting ribbons and making announcements. You know, there have been some very painful moments of being mayor. And that was one of the most painful when I went to that daycare center. You know, I think about Jordan. You know, I have a son, one son. Can you imagine? I look at 20-something years of life with him. Can you imagine a mother and a dad losing their baby months? All of that is gone because of the behavior of adults. And I don't know what's wrong with us nowadays. You know, we have to carry around Narcan to prevent our children from overdosing. I mean, if that is not an indictment on our society, how far we've gone from who we should be. We had fentanyl in a daycare center that for those children we could have lost, but we had to use Narcan. 3 of them, thank God, it saved their lives. And one of them we lost. And I spoke with the dad, you know, of the baby we lost. And I went to the hospital that night to speak with the mom and dad of the 3 that were there. One of the babies, they were in one of the cribs next door from his sibling. And just looking at that baby laying on that crib, man, it rips your heart out, you know, that night having to go, and it was going to that hospital, man, sitting in that truck. I don't want to walk in the hospital and talk to a parent that, you know, their babies are they may lose them. I have to get out that truck, go into that hospital, sit in the room and tell their parents that some adult left fentanyl that put their babies through that. You know, and we've just become so screwed up as a society. You know, we got to get our acts together. We are destroying our children, and we need to stop.
Obviously, you know, the comptroller is doing a more comprehensive analysis of the city contract with DACA. This comes after they're being looked at by the ED's office, the CEO resigned. My first question, do you still have confidence in that contract? And secondly, I wanted to get your reaction to this statement from Lander yesterday. The DACA contract in particular raises real serious concerns for us about whether that blanket prior approval is being treated as a blanket check.
But listen, we are going to review and make sure that all the contracts meet their compliance. You know, it's an emergency contract because we have an emergency. You know, I don't know if people realize that we are in a crisis right now. And so the controller has his job of reviewing these contracts. The emergency contract was approved. He has his job to do. I have my job to do as the mayor. I'm just hoping that we don't allow politics to get in the way of us doing our job. Sometimes I think he does. But, you know, he should review the contract. He should look over taxpayers' dollars. That is his job. That is our obligation. And part of looking over taxpayers' dollars is making sure that we get the resources we need. I'm still surprised, and I don't know if you guys ask him. Y'all always ask me tough questions. He has yet to go to Washington. I'm just blown away. He has yet to go to Washington, D.C. and tell Washington, D.C., this should not be happening to New York. He's the controller. He's in charge of looking over our finances. And I'm blown away that he's saying that we don't have a financial crisis, that, you know, don't worry, be happy. Everything is fine. You know, we have to cut and find $5 billion in efficiency, $12 billion in the next fiscal 2 years. And you would think the loudest voice of saying this should not be happening to New York is the person that's responsible for our finances. He has not gone to Washington. He's more critiquing the mayor of who has to fix this problem and not critiquing the people who have created this problem. I mean, does that make sense to anybody? That he's critiquing, Eric, why aren't you doing such and such? Hey, controller, why don't you critique the people who created this mess in the city of New York? He has yet to do that. Can we start some type of hashtag, go to Washington, Brad? He needs to go to Washington, D.C. and fight on behalf of New Yorkers, like I fight on behalf of New Yorkers. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm out at Brooklyn. Now I'm down in Tribeca, right next to the Narrow. But I'll be hood forever. I'm the new Sinatra. And since I made it here, I can make it anywhere. Yeah, they love me everywhere. I used to cop in Harlem. All of my...
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, 2 questions. First, can you say who from this table is going with you and who isn't NYPD, who's not part of your security detail, is going with you south of the border? And then secondly, do you stand by your chief advisor's contention that the federal government needs to close the borders?
The chief of staff will give you the list of who's going. She has been making sure we coordinate all of that. And listen, Ingrid's more than my chief advisor. Ingrid is my sister. She's been with me on this journey throughout this journey. And Ingrid, like me, we have a lot of compassion and passion when it comes down to the city that we love. Her husband served in the New York City Police Department. We were in the police academy together. And one thing I learned from her, she has her ears to the ground, and she knows what New Yorkers are feeling. She's an everyday New Yorker, and I'm just so happy that she has been on this journey with me. We believe the borders should remain open. That's the official position of this city, but we have made it clear there should be a decompression strategy that we could properly deal with the volumes that's coming into our city, and no cities should have to carry the burden of the national government.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Are you planning to bring with you any Spanish literature to convey your message?
Mayor, I was just wondering, did you meet with White House officials when you were in Mexico yesterday? And also just trying to get your reaction to the border wall being built out in Texas. Do you feel like this will help maybe stem the flow a little bit? Thank you.
No, we did not meet with the White House delegation that came down a few days ago. We did meet with high-ranking officials in Mexico, and I want to again thank them for their receptivity to sharing their ideas, and we shared ours, dealing specifically with the wall and the proposal that's coming from the national government. There's not going to be a one-item solution. There's going to be a series of things that are going to be needed to really stabilize the situation. And for Americans, the stabilization comes with managing the border. And I'm aware that many experts are stating that if you don't have a manageable way of entry, that people take more dangerous pathways. And so I believe the federal government is taking all that into consideration as they're making the decision. We're going to continue to communicate with the federal government to determine what the plans and steps forward are to not only if they officially rolled out the wall, but also what we're doing with the decompression strategy.
Next, we'll go to Bernadette Hogan from New York One. Bernadette, you can unmute your line.
Hear me okay?
Yeah, Bernadette, if you could just talk up a little more.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, once the White House rolls out this plan to deport Venezuelans that are here unlawfully and also have not applied for legal protections, do you plan on assisting them with these deportations and also information sharing?
Okay, I didn't get you completely. Did you hear the question?
She said, do you plan on assisting the federal government with deportation?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Do you plan on assisting the federal government with deportation efforts with Venezuelans?
What we're going to do in New York City is we're going to follow the law, and whatever the law requires us to do in New York City, the uniqueness of our city, we're going to do that. We're going to comply with whatever laws our city has in place. As everyone knows, I don't break laws, I follow laws, and we're going to make sure whatever the law is, that's what we're going to follow.
Next, we'll go to Mike Gartland. Mike, you can unmute your line.
Can't hear you, Michael, if you're talking.
Now?
Yes, I can.
So I want to ask you about the, deportations as a follow-up to Byrne's question. If you're following the law on that, does that in some way affect the city's status as a sanctuary city? I mean, can you just kind of get into the weeds more on that? If you're helping with deportations, which the federal government's trying to do, would that in some way impact the city's status as a sanctuary city? And if so, how?
Our city is very clear on what the law is around coordinating with ICE, and those are the laws that this administration is going to comply with. The laws are very clear, and I'm going to adhere to the laws that were in place prior to me getting in office, and I'm not going to do anything to go against those laws.
You can unmute your line.
Look here, how far into the Darien Gap do you expect to travel tomorrow? And also, as you speak face to face with migrants, are you sharing yesterday's announcements from DHS in Washington that deportations for Venezuelans will be happening again, back directly to their country? And then finally, just tied to that, do you expect that fact may ultimately be what resonates with those that may ignore your message that New York is at capacity? Thank you.
Okay, I heard your first part. I just need for you to speak a little slower because of the connection here on your second part. Give me the second part so I can answer your questions together, okay?
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. So again, how far into the Darien Gap do you expect to travel? And as you speak face to face with some of these migrants, will you be sharing yesterday's announcement from DHS that deportations for Venezuelans will be happening again? And do you think that is really what will ultimately resonate with the people you speak to?
First, with the Darien Gap, we have been extremely sensitive about discussing that trip. This is an extremely dangerous trip that we are doing for a number of reasons, and we want to be extremely careful for intel reasons on our exact location and the time that we will be and where we're going to be. We want to respect the law enforcement entity and those who are in charge of providing our safety. There's some extreme issues there that we want to respect what our officials are telling us. And so we will be able to come back once we return. We could give a deeper briefing, but at this time, we don't want to go into our specific because of the sensitivity of that area. Yes, these are the conversations. Again, it's about being honest and forthright. And we have to push back on the misinformation. And what the federal government is deciding to do, we're going to share it with those who are here once we get a full understanding and briefing. We don't want to add to the misinformation, and our team is vetting and getting a full briefing on what the federal government is going to do around Venezuela. But we want it to be clear here. We're receiving migrants and asylum seekers from many different countries, not only Venezuela. And just as here in Ecuador and in Mexico, they're receiving migrants and asylum seekers from many different countries as well.
Next, we'll go to Ethan Stark Miller. Ethan, you can unmute your line.
Mr. Mayor, your trip
Yes.
to...
I didn't even know you were there.
Mr. Mayor, your trip to Central and South America, you spoke a little bit about this at the top, about how tough it is to discourage folks who've already been through so much from continuing to make their trip on to the north. My colleague Craig interviewed a bunch of those folks who were in Ecuador, who were looking for jobs, who weren't able to find jobs in Ecuador, and obviously America has jobs. And they were thinking about still making the trip through the gap. They weren't aware that you were in the city and that you were asking them not to come. And even if they had been, they wouldn't have been deterred. So how reasonable is it to expect that this trip has any lasting impact on what's actually happening here in New York on the ground, day in and day out?
And I think that's a legitimate question that you're asking. Number one, we cannot sit back and do nothing. You know, we can't sit back and just say, okay, if you tell us the reality of what's happening in New York, we're going to look at what was happening in our own country, but anything is better than where we are. You know, what we did learn in Ecuador is that there were a number of people who left, and they're trying to now come back to Ecuador. They reached out to their government and said that they want to come back because the reality of what life is like living in a congregate shelter, unable to work. And so there are those who are attempting to come back to their countries. And so my goal was to make sure that I was transparent. It was never my desire to say, if people wanted to pursue away from their countries, I wanted to be transparent and clear of what you're coming through. And I wanted to use those local mediums to do so. And we did that. But there were those we spoke with when we were there who are asylums and migrants who stated that we got it. We know it's dangerous. We know the Darien Gap was a dangerous trek, those who went through. But the product of the American dream is just so rich to those countries. And then when you're fleeing, Ecuador is fleeing real drug violence. Venezuela is fleeing, real destabilization. And they believe, based on what was being promoted, that America was the only place that they can come, and New York City was the final destination. So my role was to be as transparent as possible, and that was my attempt. Was it successful 100%? I don't know that. We're not going to know. Is someone going to hear the voice of the mayor of the city saying, you're not coming to a 5-star hotel? I'm hoping they did. But I have to try everything to help this city deal with this crisis that we are facing. And I'm going to try everything to do so.
Mayor, if I may, hold on one second. Mayor, it was part of the trip was fact-finding as well. Maybe you or Commissioner Castro want to talk about that for a second?
Yes, and that's very important. I think people lose on those parts of it. They lose the fact-finding part of it. We learned a lot by being on the ground, and that was probably the most significant part of it. That's part of the conversation I'm going to have with former President Bill Clinton. But the information we were able to receive on some of the social media platforms that are being used, learning what Colombia willingness. Colombia, they have absorbed 2.5 million migrants and asylum seekers, and they're saying we can sort of stop the flow a lot if we have some assistance with the infrastructure. They've been left alone to basically handle it on their own. Panama is passing people through. They're unwilling to absorb any. Costa Rica is unwilling to absorb. If we can help Colombia, we can really slow this pace down. And that is some of the things that we learn in the partnership we want to have with Colombia. We want to present to our federal lawmakers. I have a call scheduled with Congressman Meeks as the ranking Democrat on foreign affairs. So stuff we learned on the ground in our fact-finding was crucial that I didn't know, wasn't aware of, and we want to continue to grow on. Commissioner Castro, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, Mayor.
It's on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. It is clear from what we saw and what we learned that cities have a very critical role in this issue. We are experiencing a new era of mass migration. And so it makes sense for us as cities to be working together. Bogota, Quito, Mexico City, El Paso, Chicago, New York City. We have to be working together to address this. And this is all being led
by 7 million Venezuelans leaving the country, all within a very short amount of time. Technology innovation, social media is driving this, and then smugglers have become entrepreneurs. We're seeing a jungle that used to be seen as uncrossable, now crossed by hundreds of thousands of people. So New York City, Mayor Adams, we truly are leading the way. Ask any expert who has been looking at this issue for decades. They've been saying time and time again, cities like New York City, global cities need to lead the way, and this is exactly what we're doing. And again, you know, there's a lot of humanity here that we had a chance to see face to face. I was not allowed to speak to people, but I did. I did speak to a family, a mother with 4 children. I saw myself in them. I was a child migrant myself, and they are terrified at crossing the jungle, but they were. And in part because they didn't find these opportunities elsewhere in South America. We want to make sure we have those conversations so that these children and these families don't have to cross the jungle and possibly not make it.
Yeah, go ahead, Nolan. Go ahead, Nolan. Yes.
Some basic facts about the trip. Can you say how many folks went along with you from the city administration and how much?
Thank you. Mayor, can you explain to us, please, your thinking behind the reticketing center, first of all? And second, when you close your eyes, when you envision an end to the migrant crisis in New York City, what do you see? How does it end?
That's a great question, NJ. The reticketing, I want to really thank DM Williams-Isom and her team. We found that many people who came to New York fit in several categories. One was that they were compelled by other localities, particularly the governor of Texas. You know, they had no other choice. Some of them wanted to stay in Texas. Some of them wanted to go somewhere else. And there was really misleading information. And we went down to El Paso. We saw how they were encouraged to go to New York City. And so the reticketing is allowing them to go to locations that they want. Some people actually want to go back to their current country of origin because they've realized that when you come to New York, you're not automatically staying in a 5-star hotel. You're not automatically going to find a job. And now the reality has settled in, and they said, I want to go back to my country of origin. The second is some people have loved ones and family members across the country, and they want to go to those different locales. And so what we did is create an option for people, because if we give you a $200 ticket somewhere to go to a place where you have support, that is not having taxpayers pay for you to spend that same amount every night taking care of you. So it's a smart, cost-effective way of getting a win-win. You go to the destination you want, and taxpayers not keep picking up the tab for this. Because what's happening now is we're having more people come into the system than that are leaving the system, and we need to address that issue. And that is the purpose of the reticketing. It is not trying to be misleading. It's not trying to be harmful. It's allowing people for the first time sit down and say, do you want to go somewhere else? And giving them the option of assisting them to do so, because some don't have the financial means to do so. And so when you talk about, I do not see the ending if the federal government does not take action. And what I must do is solve this problem. That the bottom line is, no matter how challenging it is, this administration, we must solve this problem. And that is why we went to South America to speak with leaders down there. That is why the team is constantly in a state of how do we address this issue? How do we send the right message that it's not forever? You can't come to the city and expect that for as long as you want to stay here, that you can stay here on taxpayers' dime forever. And that's what the 30 days and the 60 days is all about. Now, remember, currently in Jay, even if you are working, you can stay in our shelter system on taxpayers' dime. So we need to be very clear on the schools of thoughts in the city. There are many New Yorkers that join me that say this is not fair to taxpayers and not fair to migrant and asylum seekers.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I have a handful of questions, so just bear with me. Want to make sure I can ask all of them.
Yeah, you're not going to ask all of them. So let's so you ask your most important one first, because once I get to the point that I had enough of Chris, I'm moving on. So ask your important ones first.
I'll start. The governor said yesterday that the city needs to manage expectations as it relates to getting more migrant crisis funding for next year. What do you make of that comment from the governor that and is it a cause for concern for the city that the governor's already warning that, it's not going to be that much more funding in the pipeline? And then the other topic that I wanted to ask about is last week when Manhattan DA prosecutors dismissed a case against a security guard who was in an altercation with your advisor, Tim Pearson, they said that they did so in part because they had reviewed body cam footage. Have you reviewed that body cam footage? And then to boot, a DOI investigation that Mr. Pearson is currently under. Is that impacting his role in the administration in any way? Is his duties modified?
So let's peel back each one of them. The reviews take their course. I allow, when everyone is doing a review, I don't interfere, and I allow it to take its course, and that is what is going to happen here. Allow it to take the course, and then the reviewing agencies will make the determination of their findings and how they're going to report those findings. That is not my job. My job is to focus on running the city during a crisis, and that is what I'm going to do. Each entity in the city, they have their responsibilities, and I have trust in our reviewing agencies and bodies. Let them do the job that they do. I have not reviewed any body cam video at all, so I cannot respond to something that I have not reviewed, and I don't like, and I will never interfere with a review when it's underway. The reviewing agencies will do their job. Oh, the governor, let me answer. The governor, I don't understand the comments, so I'm not going to interpret them for her. I'm happy she made a commitment to give us $1 billion this fiscal year and to fight to get us $1 billion next. We need far more than that. As I stated, this is a $5 billion during this fiscal cycle, $12 billion in out. And so I didn't quite understand. She didn't say anything directly to me that they're going to move away from the commitments that they made. And so I'm hoping that everyone understands that New York City has done more than its share. New York City residents have used their tax dollars during these difficult times and have done more than their share. We need help from the state. We're clear on that, and we need help from the federal government.
Mayor, you've said before that it's not a matter of if, but when migrants will be sleeping on the streets. If you're preparing for that as an inevitability, what plans, what contingencies are being put in place right now to keep your goal of making sure that no children or families are sleeping on the streets? What plans are being made right now?
I like that question because what's interesting that the city council passed a law that anyone has the right to sleep on the streets. And I didn't like that law because we were trying to make sure that we don't have what we're seeing in other cities of encampments all over the place. The city council said, no, anyone has the right to sleep on the street. And now that I say that, some people may be sleeping on the streets, people are like saying, oh my God, what are you doing? Well, you just passed a law. You just passed a law that says anyone should have a right to sleep on the street. And there's nothing we can do about it. Someone can sleep in front of your house right now, and there's nothing we can do about it because that's a law they passed. Now the same people are saying, what is Eric doing, saying that people are going to sleep on the street? It can't be, I just hate everything Eric says. This is your law. And so your law says people can sleep on the street. We have reached capacity. The deputy mayor has been saying this over and over again. We're full of capacity. We can't put people in places that will violate their safety. We're not going to do that. We're going to follow the rules. We're going to follow the procedures. And so we know that we're at the point of not when, or not if, but when. People who we can't house, if they make the decision that like they did under the BQE, people under the BQE that we had to go and clean up that area, they made the decision. I went over there to speak with them. They said, we don't want to stay in the shelter. We want to stay outdoors. We want to sleep outdoors. We rather sleep on the street. Now, what am I supposed to do since the city council made that law that they can? I can't tell them not to. If they make, if you right now, Dana, decide that you don't want to live in your high-priced condominium, that you want to sleep on the street, you know,
She's like, where?
there's nothing I can do about it. I can't stop you because the law was passed that the police can't stop you, Eric can't stop you, no one can stop you. So that question should be presented to those who presented that bill and passed on it.
But thank you. So actually, two questions. First of all, is the plan for tents in public or outdoor spaces still on the table as far as taking care of migrants for the near future? And second question, given that there's higher security for the Halloween parade, will that be a given for the Thanksgiving Day parade?
First, everything's on the table. When it comes down to the migrant asylum seekers, I cannot elevate the point enough that everything is on the table. We have to constantly pivot and shift based on the income. Over 100,000 migrant and asylum seekers going through this process every day. I think last week we got close to 2,500. In 1 week we got 4,000, and so these numbers are not constant. And both the chief of staff and deputy mayor are in the constant display of how do we manage the income. And so everything is on the table. There is nothing off the table that we have to ignore to try to get this issue resolved.
Looking at locations?
Yes. But as you saw with some of the locations we had to close, we have to make sure that the FDNY, DOB, and our other entities tell us we could use the spaces. If they tell us that we can't and can point out how we're violating any procedure, we're not going to do anything that's going to put the lives of people in jeopardy. We're clear on that. And we're constantly looking at new spaces. But it's a space issue. And it's an economic issue. $5 billion this fiscal year, $12 billion over 3, coming out of roughly a small amount of money that we can discretionary use. And so we are looking at spaces. It has to be cost effective and has to be safe. And that's the combination that we're looking for. And we have already opened over 210 emergency shelters, over 210 emergency shelters. And every day we're moving around, behind the scenes. People don't see the amount of maneuvering that we have to put in place to make sure that we can hit my number one goal: no child and no family will sleep on the streets. And we'll open the floor to any questions.
Great, Charles.
Mr. Mayor, I was sort of wondering about the optics of you deciding to come back from Washington, where you were supposed to meet with the people at the White House about the migrant problem. You have a situation where you said that the migrant problem is going to destroy the city. You have a situation where you have to come up with a 5% budget modification and cut agencies this very month. So do you think that it was a wise optic for you to have come home, given the fact that migrants are probably your number one problem?
Migrants are our number one concern in this city. I have made that clear. And what I am really pleased with is that we built that coalition. And that's why coalitions are important. In D.C., you had the mayor from Chicago, the mayor of Denver. We're hearing messages from the mayor, from the governor of Massachusetts, of Houston, Los Angeles. We're seeing a coalition that I talked about for quite some time. And because that coalition was in place, they were able to continue the meetings. I'm looking forward to continue to go to Washington and continue to lean on this issue that's impacting our city. As you stated, is going to cause 5% cuts during the November plan. And then in January, we're going to have to come and look at another 5% cut. So this is a crucial issue. Marsha, you've been covering me for years. You know how I am when there's an issue that needs to be addressed, I want to be on the ground to make sure it's addressed and to make sure our team is compliant with the transparency that I expect from anyone that's part of not only my campaign team, but my team here at City Hall. When I received the notification, I did not want to be sitting inside a meeting somewhere when there was something playing out here in the city. And if there was any other reason to come back to the city, I would do so.
Wasn't, you know, I mean, what was, I mean, it must have been a hard decision going through your head. I mean, White House, migrants, something going on back here, and by the time you found out about it, the raid had already taken place.
Yeah, and you know, that's interesting because I heard many people talk about, you know, coming back to the city at the time and how it, you know, how it impacted, what were the optics. You can't govern by optics. You got to govern by action. And if you govern by anytime someone going to perceive something and put a tint to it, then you're not going to make the right decisions when you need to make the right decisions. You know, this issue of the migrant, it's not going away. I will be back in D.C. and I will address the issue that I've been able to put together this coalition about. And so people are going to interpret your actions you know, in many different ways. You have to go with your good, authentic leadership style. And my leadership style has always been the same. And, you know, sometimes it get good optics, sometimes it get bad optics, but I'm going to continue to be the leader that I've always been. My fellow New Yorkers, in recent months, our administration has delivered for you over and over again. Jobs are up, crime is down, and every day, we're delivering for working people. But for months, you've heard me talk about the fiscal challenges our city is facing as the cost of the asylum seeker humanitarian crises have skyrocketed, placing great strain on our budget. At the same time, COVID-19 stimulus funding is sunsetting. We have been clear that without significant timely action from our state and federal partners, we will be forced to make some tough choices. As we have made these hard choices, the well-being of New Yorkers has always been our top priority. We have not only managed taxpayer dollars responsibly and balanced the budget as required by law, but we have done so while minimizing disruption to the services New Yorkers rely on. In September, we directed every city agency to reduce city-funded spending by 5%. Since then, every agency has found savings with minimum disruption to services and no tax increases. Our efforts were successful. Today, we are delivering our November financial plan update with a balanced budget, just like you and your families must do when you sit down at your kitchen table and pay your bills every month. But while we succeeded, make no mistake, we are not out of the woods. We added billions of dollars to care for the migrants. COVID funding is sunsetting, and we must close a $7 billion budget gap in the coming fiscal year. That is the reality we are facing. And if circumstances don't change dramatically, city agencies will be forced to reduce city funding spending by 5% 2 more times within the next 6 months. That would mean disruptions to the services we all rely on. We cannot afford to be divided as a city in this moment. We must come together and speak with one voice to Albany and Washington, D.C. to get the support we need. We urge you to join us in that call. I have been in this city through good times and difficult times. Despite the challenges ahead of us, we will continue to come back stronger because that is the New York City way.
Coney Island. My question today is about the high needs that have existed in Coney Island before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now with this immigrant crisis that we're seeing. You've proposed some budget cuts. How are we as CBOs and a community able to support our friends and neighbors that live in this region, that are looking to settle in this region, if our resources are so limited and the needs far exceed what we're able to do on a day-to-day basis?
Listen, I feel you, and that's the question that I have to come up with every day. How do I continue to maintain operating a city as complex as this with my nonprofits? When we came into office, we had a backlog of billions of dollars that our nonprofits were being we were playing games with nonprofits in previous administrations. We tell you to provide a service, and then we want to pay you 60 cents on the dollar for the service. And then it was taking so long to get it through. Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright and her team cleared up that backlog, billions of dollars, to make sure you got money in your pocket, because you bridged the gap in the with the service providers. But the reality is that we are strapped for cash. And that's a real challenge, And you know, I think personally, the growing up poor has prepared me for this moment. Mom used to sit us down at the beginning of the week and say, "Listen, children, this is how much money's coming in the house. These are all the bills. So when you start thinking about buying those Converse sneakers, you tell me what to take off this list." People used to say, "Listen, man, you guys are the most happy people on the block because y'all get to barbecue every day." No, we didn't. The gas was turned off. We used to pray for snow so we could melt it so we have enough water because the water was turned off. This was during the time when they would turn off your water. Folks, I got to get clear with you. We don't enjoy doing this. My budget will give you those resources. My budget will make sure we have after-school program. My budget will make sure we invest in seniors. The problem is D.C. has abandoned us, and they need to be paying their cost to this national problem. So I'm with you. We need to mobilize together to tell our national government New York City is the financial capital of this country and state. Everyone should be surrounding New York City to say New York City should not be going through this. So I join you, and I want you to join us in telling our national government this should not be happening to New York.
Thank you. Next table.
Right here, sir.
And they give it their all. When you look at the people who are sitting behind this table, what they do for this city is something that when history reflects on this administration, they're going to be proud of these New Yorkers. When you look at what Zach Isco, who's running our Office of Emergency Management, all night, we have a major storm coming here. On Tuesday night, when that storm come here, you know where Zach is going to be? He's not going to be home. He's going to be at the Humanitarian Relief Center, spending the night there with the migrants who are there. The coldest day of the year this year, we slept over in that migrant Humanitarian Relief Center down at Marine Park. Deputy Mayor Ann Williams-Isom, 142,000 migrants and asylum seekers have entered the city. Not one child slept on the streets of the city of New York. Go Google other cities and see what she and her team has done month after month, day after day, 2,500 to almost 4,000 that's coming in. When you look at Deputy Mayor Mira Joshi, she handles all of these infrastructure tasks that needs to be done when you talk about them. This is what Deputy Mayor Maria Joshi is doing. Deputy Mayor Amazon, first Dominican American ever to be a deputy mayor in the city of New York. Handling all of these relationships from child care, etc. And nothing is more important. The uniqueness of Coney Island, you're probably the only district that I go to where people talk about sand. You know, we have Commissioner Sue Donahue, who used to be in charge of Prospect Park Alliance in Prospect Park, who's now in charge of our entire park system. And her dedication and commitment to park is just authentic and real. Commissioner Rodriguez, DOT, lives and eat it. First time we ever had a Dominican that was the head of DOT. First time we ever had a Spanish speaker to be the head of the New York City Police Department. First time we had women to be 5 deputy mayors in the city of New York. But we're not only having people in these prestigious positions that we're doing something, we're doing the right things. And when you look at the record, we have so many firsts, and when you start questioning them, you're going to realize how many first times ever we've had in this city of accomplishing good tasks. Now, where are we right now? And we have to be very candid and honest. Never in the history of my public service have I gone through such an emotional moment and what we had to go through in what's called the November Plan. By law, we have to pass our budget every 2 years, by law. We only have 2 ways that we could pay for the city services in this city. One is to raise taxes on property owners, and the second is to cut the spending that we're doing. That's it. That's what the Lord tell me. Eric, this is the only way as a mayor that you can pay for services. Who's here is a homeowner? You're a homeowner, sir. You budget yourself for the year on what you're going to pay on gas, electric, for your children, for your food. You know what your budget is. All of a sudden, your roof caves in. What do? You go to your insurance company, you say, hey, insurance company, my roof caved in. I've been paying insurance every year, every month. My roof caved in. Can you come and give me what my insurance payments pay for? Your insurance company say to you, no, I'm not helping you. You on your own. You have to take that money from one of the things that you do in your household. Our roof caved in when we had 140,000 people that wanted to participate in the American dream. You know who was our insurance company? The federal government. We went to the federal government and said, we send you more money than you give us back, and this is your opportunity to give us what a national problem is. And they said, you on your own, Eric. You on your own, and all these taxpayers in this city are on your own. This is unfair what we're doing to migrant asylum seekers, and it's unfair what we're doing to everyday taxpayers. And you know the only thing that migrants and asylum seekers are asking for? They're only asking for one thing. They say, let us work. We don't want anything free from you. We didn't come thousands of miles to sit around all day. Let us work. And you know the irony of this? We have thousands of jobs. We couldn't hire the 600 lifeguards because we didn't have enough people applying for the lifeguards. So if we allowed the asylum seekers to work, we would have filled all those lifeguards' jobs. We need food service workers. We need medical workers. We have a shortage of nurses. And it breaks our heart that all of the things that this team has been trying to do, after-school programs, senior care, building, public safety. It is unbelievable to me that I have to hold up a police class. Never thought that was going to happen. But this is what we're faced with. I want to pass a budget that adds cops. I want to pass a budget that allows us to have more school after programs, senior care, infrastructure building. That's the budget I want. And so when people look at what's happening in this city, we all are angry. And I tell people all the time when they stop me on the subway system, don't yell at me, yell at DC. Yell at DC. We deserve better as a city. And that's why we're out here on the ground speaking one-on-one with you. 40 years ago, I put on that bulletproof vest. And I took that oath. I'm going to serve and protect the people of this city. And there has not been 1 week in that 40 years that I have not given you everything I got. Not 1 week. You can track my record for 40 years and you will not find 1 week that I didn't give you my all.